When did the Blackwoods and Brackens agree about anything that was not certain? I ask you. Edmure Tully to Catelyn Stark. A Clash of Kings, Chapter 39. Catelyn 5. House Blackwood of Raventree Hall is an ancient family of First Men lineage, currently located in the Riverlands. They are counted among the foremost vassals sworn to House Tully of Riverrun as of 298 AC, and the start of the main A Song of Ice and Fire book series. In long since ages past, they once ruled as kings during the Age of Heroes, holding dominion over large parts of the Riverlands, alongside other prominent houses, in times where the River Kings managed to unite the whole of the Riverlands. House Blackwood would often be sworn to one of these kings. Their arms bear a flock of ravens upon a scarlet field, circling a dead weirwood tree set against black. This is in reference to both Raventree Hall and their worship of the old gods of the First Men, though their house words remain unrevealed. The Blackwoods are known to command broad lands and can muster a force said to rival or even exceed that of their Tully overlords. Raventree Hall itself stands within the Blackwood Vale, north of Riverrun and the Red Fork. Many members of the house have been described as tall and slender, among them Lord Benchicott, Lady Alysanne, Lord Titus, and Hoster. Meanwhile, Melissa Blackwood is likewise noted for her slight build. Of those whose appearance is recorded in greater detail, Lady Alysanne, Lord Titus, and Queen Betha Blackwood are said to have possessed black hair, which does seem to be a common trait for the house. The dead are honoured in different ways among the Blackwoods. Some are laid to rest in the village of Cairns, while others are buried beneath the great dead weirwood that stands at the very heart of Raventree Hall. Their seat of Raventree Hall is encircled by high ancient stone walls, their surface thick with creeping mosses. Attempts have been made to remove the moss in ages past, however it often grew back very quickly. Two massive square towers stand guard at the main gate, while a smaller tower rises at each corner of the walls. A deep stone-filled moat further strengthens its defences. The defences, while not impenetrable or as defendable as the likes of Harrenhal or Riverrun, still possess a challenge to attack, and could hold out for a long time in a siege. Within the walls lie a muddy outer ward, and a vast timber keep. Within that keep, the solar of Lord Blackwood is said to be spacious and filled with light. Its great beams hew from darkened oak. Woolen tapestries hang on the walls, and lattice-work doors set with panes of yellow diamond-shaped glass look out over the godswood below. A high-backed chair stands within, a fitting seat for a lord of such an ancient house. The godswood itself is dominated by a colossal dead weirwood tree, ancient beyond any reckoning. Each evening at dusk, hundreds of ravens descend to roost upon its pale, lifeless branches, as they have done for thousands of years, if legend is to be believed. Not far from the castle, a low rise overlooking a stream offers a clear view of two of Raventree's gates, a vantage point from which the strengths of its defences can readily be seen. According to family tradition, House Blackwood claims to have once ruled much of the Wolfswood in the north, near Winterfell, before being driven south by the Kings of Winter of House Stark. There is little proof of these claims, but it is supported in part by Maester Barnaby's runic studies and some northern legends. During the later ages of the Age of Heroes, the Blackwood kings held sway in the Riverlands, with some petty rulers of their line claiming dominion over the mouth of the Blackwater Rush. But, with a lot of these petty kingdoms in the Age of 100 Kingdoms, it fell as swiftly as it rose. The house's long and bitter feud with their neighbours, House Bracken of Stonehenge, stretches back to the Age of Heroes, when both families wore crowns. The Blackwoods maintained the Brackens were once no more than petty lords and horse breeders who seized power through hired swords. The Brackens, for their part, insist the opposite, that the Blackwoods were vassals who rose in treachery to overthrow their rightful kings. The Blackwoods placed these events some 500 years before the coming of the Andals, while the true history contends it was closer to 1,000. It is claimed by House Blackwood that it was the Brackens who poisoned the weirwood at the heart of Raventree Hall. Few could have foreseen the impact this feud would have on the history of Westeros in centuries to come. My hall might lack for food, but never for courtesy. Titus Blackwood to Jaime Lannister, A Dance with Dragons, Chapter 48. Jaime 1. The Blackwoods and Brackens once set aside their rivalry for a short time to stand together against the Andal invasion of the Riverlands, but their alliance ended in defeat at the Battle of the Bitter River. In the years that followed, their ancient feud only deepened, sharpened in part by House Bracken's conversion to the faith of the Seven, while the Blackwoods alone remained steadfast in their worship of the old gods, one of the few houses south of the Neck to do so. Lands such as the Teats, Battle Valley and the village of Blackbuckle remain bitterly contested between them to this day. Though many peaces have been forged over the centuries, often sealed with marriages, none have endured, commonly lasting a generation or two. From the blood of both houses came Benedict Rivers, a bastard who rose to become King Benedict Justman I. His descendants would rule the Riverlands for nearly 300 years. After the fall of House Justman, the region descended once more into chaos, and the Blackwoods were counted among the many petty kings who struggled for dominance during this turbulent age. In time, Lord Roderick Blackwood rose in rebellion against Humphrey I Teague, King of the Rivers and Hills, with the backing of King Arlan III Durrandon, the Storm King. Roderick was slain at the Battle of Six Kings, bringing an end to Arlan's hopes, restoring the Riverlands to Blackwood rule. When the Riverlords refused to accept Roderick's daughter, Shiera Blackwood, as queen, Arlan instead brought the Riverlands under the dominion of the Storm Kings. Centuries later, when the Ironborn kings of House Hall invaded the Riverlands, it was Agnes Blackwood who led the resistance. Her cause was undone by treachery when Lord Lothar Bracken betrayed her. Agnes was slain by King Harwin Hall, and in the aftermath the Ironborn wrestled control of the Riverlands from the Storm King, Aric Durrandon. House Blackwood supported Aegon the Conqueror during his conquest of the Seven Kingdoms, rising against Harren the Black, King of the Isles and Rivers. Not long before this, the Brackens and Blackwoods had been engaged in yet another of their private wars, for which Harren had punished both sides severely. In the aftermath of Harren's fall, many believed that House Blackwood or Bracken would be raised as lords of the Riverlands, but Aegon chose instead not to favour either of the weakened houses, instead raising Lord Edmund Tully, Lord of Riverrun, as the first Lord Paramount of the Trident. House Blackwood would prove to be loyal both to House Tully and the kings of House Targaryen. In later years, a Lord Blackwood was one of the few lords that backed the claim of the infant Laenor Velaryon at the Great Council of 101 AC, though the lords of the realm overwhelmingly voted for Viserys Targaryen as heir to King Jaehaerys I. 11 years later, in 112 AC, Samuel Blackwood fought a famed duel with Amos Bracken for the favour of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, the named heir of King Viserys I, though she would eventually go on to marry Sir Laenor Velaryon. When the Dance of the Dragons erupted between the black and green factions of House Targaryen, now Lord Samwell declared for Rhaenyra and the Blacks, while the Brackens declared for Aegon II and the Greens. In 129 AC, Samwell was slain by Amos Bracken during the Battle of the Burning Mill. That Amos himself soon fell, struck down by a wayward arrow said to have been loosened by Samwell's younger sister Alysanne Blackwood. Samwell's heir, the boy Lord Benjicot Blackwood, along with Black Aly and their kinsman, Red Rob Rivers, the bowman of Raventree, went on to fight in several key battles during the dance, including the Battle by the Lakeshore, the Butcher's Ball, and the First Battle of Tumbleton. After the Second Battle of Tumbleton, Lord Benjicot commanded one of his finest archers, Billy Burley, to grant mercy to the dying dragons on the field. At the Battle of the King's Road in 131 AC, during the final stages of the dance, the young Benjicot led the Riverlords alongside his liege lord, Kermit Tully, and his brother Sir Oscar Tully. His forces shattered the flank of Lord Boros Baratheon's army, allowing Alysanne's archers to cut down the knights and earning Benjicot the nickname Bloody Ben. After the war was over, Black Aly wed Lord Cregan Stark, securing his support in confirming King Aegon II's pardon of Lord Corlys Velaryon. In the years that followed, the Blackwoods, like the Tullys, were strengthened by the influx of Northmen who settled in the Riverlands, marrying widows at so-called Widows' Fair and taking service in their lands. I wore many names when I was quick, but even I once had a mother, and the name she gave me at her breast was Brendan Rivers, to Bran Stark, A Dance with Dragons Chapter 34, Bran 3. Lady Melissa Blackwood was the 6th mistress of King Aegon IV, and the mother of 3 of the great bastards, Maya, Gwyneth, and Brendan Rivers. Early in the reign of King Aegon, in 172 AC, Melissa came to court replacing Lady Barbara Bracken as the king's mistress, with her being dismissed in disgrace. Though she served as Aegon's mistress, Melissa, being gentle in nature and generous, won many friends, including the king's sister wife, Queen Nerys, her brother, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, and Nerys' son, Prince Daeron, the future King Daeron II. Melissa was said to be slender, in contrast to the more voluptuous Barbara Bracken. When Barbara was heard to mock her as being flat as a boy, the king responded in a characteristically crude fashion. Having once renamed the hills called the Mother's Teats in Barbara's honour, he now renamed them for Melissa and granted them to House Blackwood. To this day, the Brackens continue to call them Barbara's Teats, while the Blackwoods refer to them as Missy Teats. For 5 years, Melissa remained the king's mistress, bearing him 3 children, 2 daughters, Maya and Gwyneth, and a son, Brendan Rivers. Brendan would later enjoy a place of influence at court, owing in part to the affection many still had for his mother, even after her departure. He would rise eventually to be Hand of the King, a feared spymaster and sorcerer, and talked of across the realm for his actions during the Battle of the Red Grass Field during the First Blackfire Rebellion, where he slew Daemon Blackfire and fought a legendary duel with another half-brother, his long-term rival Aegor Rivers, another great bastard of King Aegon IV, with his mother being Barbara Bracken. In later years, a statue in honour of Melissa Blackwood would be raised at the Godswood of Raventree Hall, in memory of her kindness and place in the history of the realm. Otho Bracken was known as the Brute of Bracken, slew Lord Quinton Blackwood during the King's Landing tourney 3 years before the events at the tourney at Ashford Meadow in 209 AC, rekindling the long-standing feud between their houses. At Ashford, Bennifer, Robert, Roland and Roger Blackwood were among the participants. Sir Stephen Fossaway briefly considered persuading either Otho or the Blackwoods to champion Sir Duncan the Tall in his trial of 7, but quickly realised it would be impossible to bring Otho or one of the Blackwood champions to Sir Duncan the Tall's side in his trial of 7, but he quickly realised it would be impossible to bring such bitter enemies to fight side by side. Later, when Bloodraven marched on the wedding tourney at White Walls to suppress the Second Blackfire Rebellion, Lord Blackwood was amongst the Riverlords who answered his call and came in support. Much of the Blackwood history after this point becomes vague. Sir Eustace Osgrey boasted that in the past, members of important families had married Osgreys, citing the Blackwoods as one of these examples. The Queen Consort of King Aegon V was Betha Blackwood. Betha married the then Prince Aegon Targaryen in 220 AC at the age of 19. Their union was a love match, which saw no opposition at the time, as Aegon was far down the line in succession for the Iron Throne. Betha assisted in arranging politically advantageous betrothals for their 4 eldest children. However, the youths resisted Betha and Aegon's plans, and the children instead married for love, as their parents had done. The then young Lord Tywin Lannister, the Hand of the King for King Aerys II Targaryen, once decided to grant a mill to the Blackwoods to resolve a border dispute, but King Aerys himself instead decided to give it to the Brackens. This feud would linger on for decades more, when Lord Blackwood and Bracken would come to Riverrun, when Lysa and Catelyn Tully were still said to be young girls, to put their feud before Lord Hoster Tully's judgment. We've had hundreds of pieces with the Brackens, many sealed with marriages. There's Blackwood blood in every Bracken, and Bracken blood in every Blackwood. The old king's peace lasted a century, but then some fresh quarrel broke out, and the old wounds opened and began to bleed again. That's how it's always happened, my father says. So long as men remember the wrongs done to their forebearers, no peace will ever last. So we go on century after century, with us hating the Brackens and them hating us. My father says there will never be an end to it. House of Blackwood to Jaime Lannister, A Dance with Dragons Chapter 48. When the War of the Five Kings erupts, following the death of King Robert Baratheon, Sir Jaime Lannister defeated the River Lords beneath the walls of Riverrun and captured Edmure Tully. Lord Tytos Blackwood gathered the survivors and withdrew into the castle, where he helped hold Riverrun during Jaime's siege. In his absence, however, Raventree Hall yielded to the Lannister army. Tytos was later named among those lords whom the new king, Joffrey Baratheon, commanded to bend the knee or be declared traitors. When Robb Stark struck against the Lannister camps surrounding Riverrun, Tytos led a sortie from the castle, aiding in the rescue of Edmure. After the victory of the Battle of the Camps, Catelyn Stark glimpses Lord Blackwood in the Godswood of Riverrun, his feathered cloak about his shoulders, praying with her son before the Heart Tree. At the war council that followed, Tytos urged continued war against the Lannisters and pressed for a march on Lord Tywin Lannister at Harrenhal. He was among the River Lords who proclaimed Robb king in the north. During the War of Five Kings proper, Tytos succeeded in driving Lannister forces from Blackwood lands, though they left the Blackwood Vale ravaged and desolate in their wake. Elsewhere, Maester Luwin once suggested the widowed Lady Donella Hornwood could wed a Blackwood, while Tytos' second son, Lucas Blackwood, accompanied Catelyn Stark as part of a delegation to the camp of King Renly Baratheon. Members of House Blackwood also took part in the fighting at the Battle of the Fords. Sir Garth Greenfield is later held captive at Raventree, while Lord Tytos Blackwood is counted among the 7 nobles who set Lord Hoster Tully's funeral boat upon the waters of the Red Fork at Riverrun. Tragedy soon follows. Lucas Blackwood is slain by Hostine Frey during the Red Wedding, further deepening the losses suffered by the Blackwoods. Afterwards, when the Brackens submit to the Iron Throne and restored to the King's peace, they turn their strength against their ancient rivals. While Sir Brendan Tully the Blackfish still holds Riverrun and Lord Jason Mallister stands firm at Seaguard, the Blackwoods refuse to yield. Lord Jonas Bracken lays siege to Raventree Hall, and with the fall of Riverrun, it becomes the last stronghold in the Riverlands loyal to the Starks. In the end, Sir Jaime Lannister negotiates Raventree Hall's surrender, with Lord Tytos taking Hoster Blackwood as a hostage. Jonas Bracken presses for vast concessions of land, including the east bank of the Widow's Watch and numerous villages and holdings, but Tytos yields only a portion, surrendering Woodhedge, Crossbow Ridge, Buckle, Lord's Mill and Honeytree. Hoster Blackwood is then taken into Jaime's custody and accompanies him to Pennytree, where the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard later disappears under mysterious circumstances.